Put the headphones back on. Not the little earbuds you use today. The big ones. Heavy. Plastic or metal across the top. Thick pads covering your ears. A long cord running down to the table. Maybe there was a tape player sitting beside you. Maybe an adult was sitting across from the room. Maybe you were alone. And maybe the instructions were simple. Listen. Raise your hand when you hear the tone. Tell me which ear you hear it in. That's easy enough to explain. Schools tested children's hearing, but some former gate kids remember something else. Not just tones, a voice, music, repeating sounds, instructions, long stretches where there didn't seem to be anything they were supposed to do, except listen. And after everything we've explored in this series, there's a question I can't quite get away from. What if some of these memories weren't about testing what the child could hear? What if somebody was interested in what the child's mind did with the sound? Let's start with the obvious explanation. Schools conducted hearing screenings, and if you remember sitting somewhere wearing headphones and responding whenever you heard a little beep, you may simply remember a hearing test. Tone in the left ear, raise your hand. Tone in the right, raise your hand. Different frequencies, different volumes, done. There doesn't need to be anything mysterious about that. And that's important because decades later, memories can merge. Maybe the hearing test happened the same week as gifted testing. Maybe it happened in the same room. Maybe the same counselor took you there. Maybe you remember headphones from one experience and gate from another. 40 years later, the two became one memory. That's possible, but there's a simple way to begin separating them. Don't ask, do you remember wearing headphones? Ask, what were you supposed to do while you were wearing them? And if the answer is raise my hand when I hear the beep, we probably don't need room 2. But what if the answer is something else? Now picture the equipment, because this is another detail that matters. Some former gate kids don't simply remember headphones. They remember what those headphones were connected to. A cassette player, a tape recorder, maybe a larger piece of audio equipment. Buttons, cords, a tape being inserted, someone pressing play. Again, none of that is unusual for a school. Schools use recorded material, listening comprehension exercises, language instruction, educational programs, testing. A cassette player sitting beside a child in 1985 isn't evidence of anything. It would almost be stranger if there wasn't a cassette player somewhere in this school. But here's where the memory gets interesting. Do you remember what was on the tape? Not what somebody online told you was on it. Not what you think must have been on it. What do you actually remember hearing? Because the equipment might be ordinary. The content tells us what the test was trying to do. Go back to the chair. Put the headphones on. Someone presses play. What happens? A tone? Static. Music. A man's voice. A woman's voice. Words repeated over and over. Numbers. A story. Instructions. Were you told to close your eyes? Were you told to relax? Were you supposed to answer questions? Did they show you something before the recording started? Did they show you something afterward? Were you asked what you remembered? What you imagined? What you saw in your head? Or do you remember absolutely none of it? Because I don't remember counts. That's better than filling the empty space with somebody else's memory. Maybe all you remember is the weight of those giant headphones against your ears, the click of the button, the hiss before the recording started, and then nothing useful. That's still the memory. Don't improve it. Don't make it stranger. Just leave it where it is. Because if enough people independently remember the same details, we can start asking a better question. What was being measured? A hearing test measures hearing. Did you detect the tone? Listening comprehension measures comprehension. Did you understand what you heard? Memory testing might ask, what can you recall? All perfectly ordinary. But imagine the questions change. What did you picture? Describe what you saw. What did the sound make you think about? Where did your mind go? What shape came into your head? What color? What place? Now, we're no longer simply testing the ear. We're testing what happened between the ears. And even that doesn't have to be paranormal. Visualization, attention, memory, imagination, suggestibility, cognitive processing. There are plenty of reasons someone might be interested in how a gifted child responds to audio information. But inside the hypothesis we've been building, there's another possibility. What if everybody heard the exact same thing, but one child responded differently? After part 7, we need to be particularly careful here. Gateway used audio techniques. Schools used audio techniques. Hearing tests used headphones. Language labs used headphones. Recorded educational testing used headphones. The fact that 2 people wore headphones doesn't connect their programs. So no, I cannot tell you that former Gate kids were simply listening to Gateway tapes. I haven't seen evidence establishing that. And a pair of giant 1980s headphones isn't the bridge we were looking for. But Gateway does give us a reason to ask a broader question. People are seriously interested in whether sound, focused attention, relaxation, and particular mental states could change subjective experience. So instead of asking, were Gate kids doing Gateway? Ask something we might actually be able to investigate. Were researchers studying how gifted children responded to sound, guided visualizations, or recorded cognitive exercises? Who designed those tests? Who published them? What were they intended to measure? And most importantly, do any of those recordings still exist? Now imagine 30 children. Same room, same headphones, same recording, same instructions. 29 children give ordinary answers. Then, there's number 30, the outlier. Maybe the child describes the recording with extraordinary detail. Maybe they remember information the others don't. Maybe their visualization is unusually vivid. Maybe they produce an answer the test wasn't designed to produce. Maybe it's meaningless. Maybe it's chance. Maybe the administrator simply writes something down and everybody goes back to class. But if it happens again, different recording, same child, different test, same unusual response. Now the tape itself doesn't need to be special. The child is. And that takes us right back to the central idea behind this entire series. Maybe Gate wasn't secretly training anybody. Maybe Room 2 wasn't a curriculum. Maybe somebody simply noticed when one of the children responded differently. And once you notice an outlier, you test again. So here's what I want now. Not another theory, the tape. Because unlike a childhood memory, a cassette doesn't have to remember what happened 40 years ago. It either exists or it doesn't. Somewhere, there may still be a box in an attic, a retired teacher's materials, an old school storage room, a district archive, a testing kit, a publisher's catalog, an administrator's manual, a cassette with a title printed on the label. Maybe somebody has one sitting in a box and has absolutely no idea anyone is looking for it. And if we find one, maybe we discover something incredibly boring. Listening comprehension, vocabulary, a perfectly ordinary hearing exercise. Good. That's an answer. Maybe we find the test manual. And finally, understand why some former gate kids remember being asked to visualize things while listening. That's an answer too. But until we have something physical, we need to be careful about filling a blank cassette with whatever theory we like best. So, if you remember the listening tests, start with what you know. What year? What state? How old were you? Where were you sitting? What did the headphones look like? What were they connected to? Who administered the test? What were you told to do? And what do you actually remember hearing? If you don't remember, say you don't remember. Because right now, the missing memory isn't nearly as useful as the missing object. Somebody made the recording, somebody bought it, somebody wrote the instructions, somebody pressed play. And if this was an ordinary educational test, somewhere there should be a name for it. So, before we build another room, before we add another handler, before we connect another government program, let's find something simpler. A box, a label, a manual, a cassette. Find the tape, because maybe there's nothing unusual on it at all. Maybe the unusual thing was the kid listening to it. This is the GATE program mystery, and we're not done yet.